Why bother telling a story of somebody who's not, someone who's unremarkable, someone who didn't do anything inspiring, wasn't Michelangelo or Walt Whitman or Roosevelt on the one hand, Lincoln on the one hand, on the other hand, a Rasputin or a Mao or Stalin. And on top of that, someone who led a life that wasn't exemplary, that was kind of pretty ignoble in a way, not because they wanted to harm anybody per se, but because they had no real model for leading a decent life, because this is what they learned from the world around them. So that's something that I've always been attracted to and interesting to me. Someone like Jordan or Jake LaMotta or Tommy, Joe Pesci's character in Goodfellas. And people say, well, that type of person, that sort. But I guess what that means is that they try to distance themselves from them. It's someone else, it's not me. But in actuality, I feel it's not someone else, it's us, it's you and me. And maybe if we had been born under different circumstances, maybe we would have wound up making exactly the same mistakes and choices and doing exactly the same things. Because I really think it's, when they say it's people of that kind, it's really not a matter of equalizing everyone and saying we're all responsible. I think it's a matter of facing and recognizing, acknowledging that part of us, which is a part of our common humanity, and we have to deal with it. He thought that he could bypass morality or surpass morality with a combination of money and drugs. I don't know, maybe he still does, I really don't know. I mean, it's another way of answering the question. He was different from Madoff and Skilling in that they weren't crashing helicopters or throwing little people, or maybe they were, but maybe if they did, they kept it pretty quiet. But in that sense, Jordan's experiences are more entertaining, and that brings you closer to him, because you look at these guys and think, wow, this seems to be a lot of fun. Well, it doesn't just look that way. They really did have a lot of fun. In fact, that's really all they could do, is have fun and more on top of that, until it wasn't so much fun anymore. But what they couldn't do was just be. They just couldn't face that. So the challenge is to show that honestly, without tipping the scales into judgment and taking you outside of the world of these characters and the particular ways that they lived their lives, which was to obliterate all obstacles, all troubles, all difficulties by taking more drugs, more money. Sex was not even a factor. Sex was just part of that, in a sense. So it's really drugs and money and power. Now, in the planning stages, it was, as they say these days, a challenge. But, we decided to do it. And when we decided to do it, I had to have total freedom with the cast and crew to do what I needed to do, which meant we all decided that we were going to go all the way with it as much as we could. And actually encouraged that. Well, the first thing that hit my mind is a kind of profanity. The profane as opposed to the sacred. The obscene, in a way, as opposed to the decency. And but it's not an expose. I mean, the obscenity, profanity it's right there. It's in plain sight. It's part of the very fabric of the culture. And there's a little bit of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, that TV show, the kind of show that had exploded all over the entertainment and news industry, on TV, on the internet, in the papers and movies. All of that's there. It's even more now than the time we depicted in Wolf of Wall Street. So what we're doing in Wolfish, trying to show people participating in that outlook, that approach to life, which is ultimately, although they're very young at first, ultimately it's really a way of avoiding yourself, a way of being alone with yourself. It's entertaining, I would think, especially. I think that the gamble here, or the risk, is entertaining because it's so bad, the behavior. And of course, there's always the especially in America, the fascination with the rise and the fall, the rise of the gangster, the fall, the gangster tradition. There's so many examples in history and theater and novels and poetry and movies. I mean, in this case, there's a rise and a fall, but maybe even a rise again. Say, possibly, more than maybe. If not a character like Jordan, there are many others. I think it's always a good time to tell this story. And as I said before, I think that there's a general belief that the market will implode again, and then again and again. Maybe there will come a time in the future when people look at stories like this and wonder, what they were really all about. But we've spun completely the other way. I don't think we'll ever be even that close to that sort of thing. It's always interesting. It's always fascinating about the betrayal of trust in a story between people, characters, let alone betrayal of trust between strangers, let alone people who are very close to each other, of course, whether through marriage or family. And so there's that element that's always been in my movies that deals with these characters that break that trust. And right here, the fundamental, going in, they're pretending there's trust. Going in, they've broken it already, even before picking up that phone or making that, dealing with that client, so to speak. Leo, again, I think this is our 5th time working together. I've been very lucky over the past 12, 14 years or so to be able to check in with Leo and be, really to be attracted to the same characters, similar characters, similar stories. And again, there's a matter of trust in that relationship, the professional relationship and personal, and the ability to take more risks and to push as an actor and hopefully to push as a filmmaker. And so, yes, he's 30 years younger than me, but it's still, I must say that there's still, I still find the inspiration. I still find that there's ways, if he's really interested in something, it usually is stuff that I would be interested in, and vice versa to a certain extent, which is, in the past 10, 12 years has given me a kind of a whole reboot, so to speak, of energy to make films. Working with Matthew McConaughey the first time was really interesting. I saw him in this film Mud, the Jeff Nichols picture, and I really liked him. I didn't recognize him, actually. And took me halfway through the film to understand that that's who that was. And it just seemed to be part of the very nature of the place that the film was depicting and the world that it was depicting. It seemed so natural. And so when we talked about doing this part, we only met for a few minutes, and he said, "What about my accent?" I said, "No, why couldn't there be a Southern accent on Wall Street?"